When you think of World War II, whose faces come to mind? Eisenhower, Churchill, Patton, the generals, the presidents, the names in every textbook. But what if I told you that some of the war's most extraordinary acts of courage came from people whose names you've never heard? People who didn't command armies or plan invasions, but who did things so impossible, so insane, that they sound like fiction. One man volunteered to be imprisoned in Auschwitz, while everyone else was trying to escape. A woman became so deadly that the Gestapo put a 5 million franc bounty on her head and called her the White Mouse. A one-eyed soldier liberated an entire Dutch city. By himself. In one night. A 24-year-old history student became the most lethal female sniper in history, with 309 confirmed kills. And a man who refused to carry a weapon saved 75 lives in the war's bloodiest battle. 5 people. 5 impossible missions. 5 names that should be legendary. This is their story. In the summer of 1940, whispers began spreading through occupied Poland. There was a new camp, a place called Auschwitz. Families would receive telegrams. Your son died of illness. Your husband died of pneumonia. But people knew something darker was happening. The Polish underground needed intelligence from inside. The question was simple but horrifying. Who would voluntarily get captured and sent there? Witold Pilecki was a 39-year-old Polish cavalry officer, a husband, and a father of 2. When Germany invaded Poland in September 1939, he refused to surrender. While others fled or accepted defeat, Pilecki co-founded one of the first resistance groups, the Secret Polish Army. He lived a ghost's life in Warsaw, watching Nazi terror tighten its grip with every public execution. When his commanders asked for a volunteer to infiltrate Auschwitz, there was silence. This wasn't an order. It was an invitation to almost certain death. And then Pilecki looked up and said 3 words. I will go. On September 19, 1940, Pilecki walked deliberately into a Nazi street roundup in Warsaw. Using fake papers under the name Tomasz Serafiński, he let himself be caught. 2 days of brutal detention. Then the train to Auschwitz. On the night of September 21st, the gates closed behind him. He was no longer Witold Pilecki. He was prisoner number 4859. The reality was worse than anything he'd imagined. The moment prisoners stepped off the train, SS guards descended on them with clubs and fists. This was before Auschwitz became the industrial death factory it would later be. But it was already a place designed to crush the human spirit through starvation, slave labor, and sadistic cruelty. Pilecki's first mission was simple: survive. The hunger, he later wrote, was the hardest battle of his life. He endured back-breaking labor in freezing temperatures. He survived pneumonia. He survived typhus. At one point, he was part of a work detail building a crematorium, a chilling preview of the horror to come. But he wasn't there just to survive. Almost immediately, he began organizing a secret resistance network inside the camp. He called it ZOW, the Union of Military Organizations. It was built in small, separate cells so that if one member broke under torture, he couldn't betray the others. ZOW had 3 goals. First, boost morale by smuggling news, extra food, and medicine to dying prisoners. Second, gather intelligence. Pilecki's network documented everything: torture methods, death tolls, the names of SS officers, and the first experiments with Zyklon B gas on Soviet POWs. And third, the most audacious goal: plan an uprising to liberate the camp, hoping the Polish Home Army outside would help. Getting intelligence out required incredible ingenuity. His reports made their way from Auschwitz to Warsaw, then to London and the Allies. They were among the very first comprehensive accounts of the Holocaust. They detailed the construction of gas chambers, the systematic extermination of Europe's Jews, the truth that the world didn't want to believe. For 2.5 years, Prisoner 4859 was the Allies' eyes inside hell. But by the spring of 1943, the situation was desperate. His reports had reached London, but slow, no help was coming. The Gestapo was closing in on his network. He learned he was about to be transferred, which would end his mission. He realized the only way to make the world believe him was to escape and deliver his testimony in person. Escape from Auschwitz was considered impossible. The penalty was public hanging. Yet Pilecki and 2 comrades made a plan. They got assigned to a night shift at a camp bakery outside the main fence. On the night of Easter, April 26, 1943, while a guard was distracted, they force open a heavy door. The sound of metal echoes across the yard. They sprint into the darkness. Behind them, shots ring out. For a week, they travel on foot, hiding during the day, pushing through exhaustion and fear, until they reach a Polish Home Army unit. Witold Pilecki was free. He had broken into Auschwitz, survived for 900 days, built a resistance network in hell itself, and now he had broken out. He immediately compiled a 100-page report detailing everything: the camp's structure, the methods of extermination, the truth. But his war wasn't over. He fought in the Warsaw Uprising of 1944. He was captured and spent the rest of the war in a German POW camp. And when the war ended, he returned to Poland as a spy to report on Soviet occupation. In 1947, the Communist secret police arrested him. They tortured him. During his final visit with his wife, he told her, Auschwitz was just a game compared to what he was enduring now. On May 25, 1948, Captain Witold Pilecki, the hero of Auschwitz, was executed with a shot to the back of the head by his own countrymen. For decades, the communist government erased his story. It wasn't until after 1989 that the world learned the truth about the man who volunteered for hell to become its accuser. While Pilecki was bearing witness from inside the camps, hundreds of miles away in occupied France, another kind of war was being waged, a war of sabotage, deception, and deadly precision. And leading it was a woman the Nazis would come to fear above all others. Nancy Wake didn't look like a warrior. Born in New Zealand, raised in Australia, she was a journalist who loved Paris, champagne, and handsome men. In 1937, she married a wealthy French industrialist, Henri Fiocca, and settled into a life of luxury and cocktail parties. But beneath the glamorous exterior was a core of absolute steel. As a reporter in the 1930s, she had traveled to Vienna and witnessed something that changed her forever. Nazi gangs brutally beating Jewish men and women in the streets. The experience horrified her and ignited a burning hatred for everything the Nazis stood for. She made a vow. If she ever got the chance, she would do anything to fight them. When Germany invaded France in 1940, her chance came. While many in her privileged position fled to safety, Nancy and Henri stayed. They immediately joined the French resistance. Her status as the wife of a rich businessman gave her freedom of movement that most people didn't have. She started as a courier and ambulance driver, smuggling messages and supplies. But her work quickly escalated. She became a key figure in the Pat O'Leary escape line, one of the most successful networks saving Allied soldiers and Jewish refugees. She would lead them on treacherous hikes through the Pyrenees Mountains into Spain. Hours in freezing temperatures, dodging German patrols at every turn. Nancy was exceptionally good at it. Too good. The Gestapo knew someone was running escapes in southern France, someone who slipped through every trap they set. Frustrated and furious, they gave her a code name, the White Mouse, and they put a staggering 5 million franc bounty on her head. Nancy Wake, the socialite journalist, was now the Gestapo's most wanted person in all of France. By 1943, the net was tightening. Her network was betrayed. She had to flee, leaving Henri behind. He promised he'd follow. He never did. The Gestapo captured him. They tortured him for information about Nancy. He refused to talk. They executed him. Nancy wouldn't learn of his death until after the war. Her own escape was a nightmare. Multiple failed attempts to cross the mountains. She was arrested and interrogated for 4 days, but the Gestapo didn't realize who they had. She stuck to her cover story and was released. Finally, on her 7th attempt, she made it to Britain in June 1943. Most people would have been content to sit out the rest of the war in safety. Not Nancy. Burning with a desire for revenge, she joined the Special Operations Executive, Churchill's secret army tasked with setting Europe ablaze. An SOE officer described her as a real Australian bombshell with tremendous vitality and flashing eyes. The SOE put her through grueling training, espionage, sabotage, and hand-to-hand combat. She excelled at all of it. Training reports noted she was a very good and fast shot, with a spirit that could put the men to shame. Her mission: parachute back into occupied France and turn the ragtag local resistance fighters, the Maquis, into a disciplined army for the upcoming Allied invasion. On the night of April 29, 1944, Nancy jumps into darkness over the Auvergne region of France. Her parachute snags in a tree, leaving her dangling. The Maquis leader who finds her reportedly says, "I hope that all the trees in France bear such beautiful fruit this year." Her response? "Don't give me that French shit." Her job was to organize weapons drops and weld thousands of fighters into a real fighting force. The grizzled Maquisards weren't used to taking orders from a woman, but Nancy quickly earned their respect. She could outdrink them, outshoot them, and outfight them. Under her command, the resistance force grew to around 7,000 fighters. She led from the front, participating in ambushes and sabotage raids that caused chaos for the Germans before and after D-Day. In one incredible incident, their radio codes were lost in a raid. Without codes, they couldn't receive weapons drops. The nearest replacement codes were 500 kilometers away, over 300 miles, through enemy-occupied territory and past countless German checkpoints. Nancy got on a bicycle and rode through the night. For 72 hours, she pedaled past German patrols, through checkpoints, surviving on adrenaline and sheer willpower. She got the codes and made it back. Nancy Wake didn't just coordinate resistance, she was the resistance. In June 1944, the Germans sent 22,000 SS troops to crush her 7,000 Maquis fighters. Outnumbered more than 3-1, most commanders would have been slaughtered. But Wake organized a fighting withdrawal, repeatedly driving through enemy fire to deliver orders. Her forces inflicted 1,400 German casualties while losing only 100 of their own. It was during this brutal close-quarters combat that Nancy's ferocity became the stuff of legend. During a raid on a German gun factory, An SS sentry spotted her unit. Before he could raise the alarm, Nancy acted on pure instinct. She used a silent killing technique she'd learned in training, a judo chop to the throat. Decades later, when an interviewer asked what happened, she simply drew a finger across her neck. They'd taught this judo chop stuff, but this was the only time I used it. Whack! And it killed him all right. I was really surprised. She hunted Nazis, sometimes with her bare hands. Nancy Wake was utterly ruthless when necessary. When a young woman in the Maquis was exposed as a German spy, the French fighters hesitated to execute her. Wake insisted she'd do it herself if they wouldn't. Seeing her resolve, they relented. This was Nancy Wake, charming and glamorous one moment, a hardened killer the next. When the war ended, she led her fighters in the victory celebrations in Paris. She became one of the most decorated servicewomen of the war, receiving honors from France, Britain, and the United States. But her joy was shattered when she learned of Henri's execution. The war had made her a legend, but it cost her the love of her life. She struggled to adapt to peacetime. She worked for British intelligence, returned to Australia, even ran for Parliament twice. But she never lost her fire. In her later years, she could be found at a London hotel bar, telling war stories over gin and tonics, still fierce and unapologetic. When she died in 2011 at age 98, her ashes were scattered over the hills of Montluçon, where she had once fought so bravely. While Wake was leading thousands in France, on the other side of Europe, a different kind of warrior was about to pull off something that sounds completely impossible. A man who'd already lost an eye in combat, but refused to go home. Because he had one more city to liberate. By himself. Léo Major was the kind of soldier who made his commanders nervous. Born in 1921 in New England but raised in Montreal, he joined the Canadian Army in 1940 and quickly earned a reputation as a skilled and extremely cocky scout and sniper. In June 1944, during the Battle of Normandy, a German phosphorus grenade exploded near his face. The blast destroyed his left eye. His commander assumed he'd be sent home. Léo refused. "I have two eyes," he told his commander. "I only need one to sight my rifle." He ripped off the bandages, put on an eye patch, and went back to the front lines. He looked like a pirate. He fought like a demon. By April 1945, as Allied forces pushed into the Netherlands, they approached the city of Zwolle, a city of 50,000 civilians suffering under German occupation. The plan was to bombard the city and then send in troops, but that meant civilian casualties. Major's commanding officer asked for reconnaissance. How many Germans were in the city? Major volunteered, but he wasn't just going to scout. He had a different plan entirely. He was going to liberate the whole damn city. Alone. On the night of April 13th, 1945, Léo Major and one other soldier, Willy Arsenault, sneak into Zwolle. Within the first hour, they run into a German patrol. Arsenault is killed almost immediately. Major is alone. Most soldiers would retreat. Not Léo Major. Now he's angry. He starts hunting. He spots a staff car full of German officers and ambushes them, killing several. He captures others and forces them to tell him where the rest of the troops are. Then he does something insane. He runs through the streets of Zwolle, firing his machine gun, throwing grenades, and screaming at the top of his lungs in German. He sets buildings on fire. He attacks multiple German positions, making it sound like an entire battalion is attacking from all sides. The Germans panic. They think the city is under a full-scale Allied assault. Major keeps moving, keeps firing, keeps creating chaos. At one point, he stumbles into the local Gestapo headquarters. He burns it to the ground. Throughout the night, he encounters Dutch resistance fighters and tells them to spread the word. Make noise. Light fires. Create chaos. Make the Germans think the entire Allied army is here. It works. By dawn, the German garrison commander orders a full retreat. The Nazis abandon Zwolle. Léo Major, one man with one eye, has liberated a city of 50,000 people. By himself. When Canadian forces entered Zwolle the next morning, they found Dutch citizens dancing in the streets, waving flags, celebrating their liberation. And standing in the middle of it all, exhausted and covered in soot, was Léo Major. Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery wanted to award Major the Distinguished Conduct Medal for his actions. Major's response? Pause. He refused it. He told them Montgomery was incompetent, and he didn't want anything from him. This guy. But wait, his story doesn't end there. After World War II, Major fought in the Korean War, where he single-handedly held a crucial hill against waves of Chinese soldiers for 3 days, earning another medal. He finally accepted that one. Léo Major returned to Canada, worked as a pipe fitter, and lived quietly until his death in 2008. The Dutch never forgot him. In Zwolle, there's a street named after him. Every year they commemorate his liberation of their city. The liberation by one cocky, one-eyed Canadian who refused to go home. While Major was causing chaos in Western Europe on the Eastern Front, the war was even more brutal. And in that hell, a 24-year-old history student was becoming the most feared sniper the Nazis had ever encountered. In June 1941, when Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union, Lyudmila Pavlichenko was a history student at Kiev University. She was 24 years old, studious, and had a quiet hobby: target shooting. She was very, very good at it. When the invasion began, she went to the recruiting office to volunteer. They laughed at her. They told her to become a nurse. That's what women did in war. Lyudmila was not interested in being a nurse. She told them she was a sharpshooter. She showed them her marksmanship certification. They finally, reluctantly, gave her a rifle and sent her to the front as a sniper. They would soon regret laughing. She was assigned to the Red Army's 25th Rifle Division defending Odessa. Within her first month of combat, she had 100 confirmed kills. Her commanders couldn't believe it, but the kills kept coming. She was calm, patient, and absolutely lethal. Being a sniper in World War II wasn't like video games or movies. It meant lying motionless for hours, sometimes days, in freezing cold or baking heat, waiting for a single shot. It meant being hunted by enemy counter-snipers who were just as skilled. One mistake meant death. Could you stay perfectly still for 12 hours waiting for one shot? During the siege of Sevastopol, Pavlichenko's deadliest hunt began. German commanders became obsessed with killing her. They sent their best sniper, a German with dozens of kills of his own. For days, they hunted each other through the rubble. Both were invisible. Both were waiting for the other to make one tiny mistake. On the third day, the German sniper moved. Just slightly. Just enough. Pavlichenko fired. One shot. He was dead. She placed a piece of paper on a stick and raised it where he'd been hiding. German soldiers shot at it, revealing their positions. She eliminated them one by one. By the time she was wounded by mortar fire in June 1942, Lyudmila Pavlichenko had 309 confirmed kills, including 36 enemy snipers. This made her the most successful female sniper in history. The press started calling her Lady Death. Soviet leadership pulled her from combat and sent her on a propaganda tour to rally support. She traveled to the United States and met Eleanor Roosevelt, who became a close friend. American reporters asked her silly questions, like what kind of makeup she wore in combat. Her response? "Gentlemen, I am 25 years old, and I have killed 309 fascist occupants by now. Don't you think you've been hiding behind my back for too long?" Brutal. Legendary. She spoke at rallies across America, telling the truth about the Nazi invasion and urging the Allies to open a second front in Europe. She was the first Soviet citizen received at the White House. After the war, she finished her history degree and became a historian. She trained Soviet snipers and lived to see the Soviet Union collapse. When she died in 1974, she was buried with full military honors. Lyudmila Pavlichenko proved that courage, skill, and deadly precision have no gender. She remains the most lethal female sniper in history, and her story is a reminder that heroes come in all forms. Every warrior we've met so far took lives to save others. But what about someone who refused to kill anyone, and still became one of the war's greatest heroes? Desmond Doss believed killing was wrong. As a devout Seventh-day Adventist, his faith taught him, "Thou shalt not kill." When America entered World War II, Doss could have avoided service as a conscientious objector. But he wanted to serve. He just wouldn't carry a gun. During basic training, Doss became the most hated man in his unit. Soldiers beat him. Officers tried to get him discharged. They called him a coward to his face. But Doss refused to quit. He trained as a medic and told everyone who would listen, "I'm willing to die for my country. I just won't kill for it." In April 1945, Doss's unit, the 77th Infantry Division, was sent to Okinawa, one of the bloodiest battles of the Pacific War. Their objective was a 400-foot cliff, the Americans called Hacksaw Ridge. On May 5, 1945, American forces climbed the ridge using cargo nets. They reach the top and immediately face a hell of Japanese artillery, machine guns, and mortars. Within hours, the battlefield is a slaughterhouse. Men are cut down everywhere. The order comes to retreat. But dozens of wounded Americans are still up there, bleeding out, dying, alone. Desmond Doss refuses to leave. While everyone else retreats down the cliff, he stays behind. No weapon, just his faith and a prayer. "Lord, help me get one more." For the next 12 hours, under constant enemy fire, Doss moves through the carnage. He drags wounded soldiers to the edge of the cliff. He fashions a rope system with a bowline knot and lowers them down one by one. Some are unconscious. Some are screaming. Some beg him to leave them and save himself. He refuses. "One more," he prays. "Let me save one more." He saves one. Then another. Then another. The Japanese shoot at him. Grenades explode around him. He keeps going. By the time he finally descends the cliff himself, pause. He has single-handedly rescued 75 men. 75. Without firing a single shot. The soldiers who had once called him a coward now called him a hero. One of them later said, "He was one of the bravest persons alive." On October 12, 1945, President Harry Truman awarded Desmond Doss the Medal of Honor, the first conscientious objector to ever receive it. Doss stood there, humble as always, and said he was just doing his duty. The 2016 film Hacksaw Ridge tells his story, and remarkably, it's mostly accurate. Director Mel Gibson actually toned down some of Doss's heroics because he thought audiences wouldn't believe them. Doss returned home, married his sweetheart Dorothy, and lived a quiet life until his death in 2006. He never sought fame. He never bragged. When asked about that night on Hacksaw Ridge, he simply said he did what any good medic would do. But we know better. Desmond Doss proved that courage doesn't require a weapon. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is refuse to kill, and save lives instead. 5 people. 5 impossible missions. 5 names you've probably never heard. Until now. Witold Pilecki walked into hell to bear witness. Nancy Wake became a legend with a judo chop and unstoppable will. Léo Major liberated a city with one eye and pure audacity. Lyudmila Pavlichenko became Lady Death, with 309 reasons why. Desmond Doss saved 75 lives while refusing to take a single one. What connects them? It's not that they were superhuman. They were a farmer, a journalist, a pipe fitter, a student, and a conscientious objector. They were ordinary people who made extraordinary choices when the world needed them most. In humanity's darkest hour, when evil seemed unstoppable and surrender seemed rational, these 5 individuals refused to be bystanders. They didn't wait for orders or permission. They saw what needed to be done, and they did it, regardless of the cost. Their stories were nearly lost. Pilecki was erased by communism. Wake's legend faded after the war. Major went back to fixing pipes. Pavlichenko became a historian. Doss went home to his farm. History almost forgot them. But we won't. Because these stories matter. They remind us that one person can make a difference. That courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being terrified and acting anyway. That heroism doesn't always wear a uniform or carry a medal. Sometimes it wears an eye patch. Sometimes it rides a bicycle 500 kilometers. Sometimes it refuses to carry a gun. These are the warriors history tried to forget. But their legacies live on, not in statues or textbooks, but in the lives they saved, the cities they liberated, and the truth they refused to let die. So, here's my question for you. Which story shocked you the most? The man who broke into Auschwitz? The woman who killed with her bare hands? The one-eyed liberator? Lady Death with 309 kills? Or the medic who saved 75 without firing a shot? Drop a comment and let me know. I read every single one, and your answers help me find the next forgotten hero to bring to light. If you want more stories like this, the warriors' history overlooked, the missions that sound impossible, the names that deserve to be legendary, hit that subscribe button. Because there are dozens more heroes waiting to be discovered. Thanks for watching, and remember, history is full of forgotten voices. Let's bring them back.